Hello, in this, the second of my 2 video blogs, I'll describe some of the ways in which you can help children fall asleep quickly and easily so that both you and they are able to enjoy a restful night's sleep. The key here is consistency in the bedtime routines you establish. These should involve pre-sleep rituals lasting between 10 and 15 minutes. These will enable your child to become able to associate falling asleep with going to bed. They may include a relaxing bath, washing their teeth, reading a story, and so on. The thing is that the rituals should be consistent. Of course, while changes in family routines may occasionally mean your child goes to bed earlier or later than usual, these exceptions should be kept to a minimum. The more consistent your pattern of routine is, the easier your child will learn to fall asleep. You see, your child should come to associate going to bed with going to sleep, rather than as a place where they play, or perhaps as a form of punishment. For example, if you send them to bed early for misbehaving. Now, I advise you not to allow your child to eat within a couple of hours of going to bed, and you should avoid giving them anything containing caffeine, for example, chocolate, tea, cola, and indeed many carbonated soft drinks, after around noon. You shouldn't allow any computers, TVs or cell phones in the bedroom. The problem here is that these encourage a child to see bed as a place to play, and playing makes them more active and therefore makes it harder for them to fall asleep. And also, as I mentioned in my previous video blog, the blue light produced by many of these electronic gadgets actually makes it much harder for children to fall asleep. This is because it reduces a substance called melatonin in the brain. Now, the bedroom itself should be dark, not too warm, and preferably as quiet as possible. Of course, if your child is nervous of the darkness, and many children are, then by all means use a nightlight to help them overcome these fears. A favourite toy can be useful in helping your child settle down and feel comfortable. What you must do is avoid any stimulating play, exercise, television or computer games immediately before the child goes to bed. I see, one woman who contacted us at Mind Changers explained how her husband, on coming home from work fairly late, always wanted to spend an hour and a half or so playing vigorously with his 6-year-old son. He encouraged him, for example, to all sorts of active and very mentally stimulating activities, which of course both he and the child loved. Now, well, while it's perfectly understandable that a father should want to spend time with his son, you know, what could be more natural and normal than that? It's really, as far as the child's sleep patterns are concerned, really the last thing an infant needs immediately before trying to fall asleep is this kind of stimulation, mental and physical stimulation. So what I suggested to her, and I suggest to you if this is a problem in your family as well, is to try and discuss it with your partner and come to a kind of a compromise about this. The thing is, if your child is overstimulated just before he or she needs to wind down from the day, they simply won't be able to get to sleep quickly and easily. I think it's also important to set limits on the way in which you interact with your child once they have gone to bed. I would avoid lying down beside him or her on the bed, or spending the night with them, as some parents like to do. Children will sometimes make excessive demands on their parents, constantly asking, for example, a drink of water or another story or a game. This is really a way of their delaying the moment when they have to settle down to sleep. It's not a very good idea to do this, so I suggest you try and set a limit on these requests, without of course causing the child to feel abandoned. I think one quite good way of doing this is to tell your child that you have to leave them for a few minutes to do some kind of a chore. Now, when those few minutes have passed, whatever you set, the time you set, you must go back and check on them and if they're awake, then interact with for a little while. Continue to do this until when you return to the bedroom, the time the child has fallen asleep. So, increase the time gradually. What we need to do is when you come back finally, the child is asleep. So, in conclusion, here are 3 do's and 3 don'ts that will help your child get a good night's sleep. Do be consistent in the routine you establish. Remember, bed should be a place which the child associates with going to sleep rather than somewhere where they can play, watch TV, operate their computer or whatever. The second do is to keep the room well aired, not too warm, and as dark as possible, bearing in mind what I said about a night light for children who are anxious in the dark. I think the third thing I would suggest is that you set limits on the child. He should be or she should be learn to fall asleep within 20 minutes of going to bed. That really is kind of the ideal, preferably around 15 minutes. And you should never fall into the trap of allowing excessive demands from the child to delay the onset of sleep. Now for 3 don'ts. Don't overstimulate your child mentally or physically before going to bed. Remember these wind down routines. A warm bath, for example, is very sleep inducing. The same applies, of course, to an afternoon nap. He or she should learn to settle down to nap rather than playing. Don't provide any caffeine-containing food or beverages after around midday. Don't sleep with the child or lie down on the bed beside him or her. I think provided these simple rules are followed fairly rigorously, your child should quickly develop a good health-enhancing ability to fall asleep within around 15 minutes. Now, if there are problems relating to snoring or other breathing difficulties, then, as I explained in my first video, you should seek professional advice from your GP or your health professional. In the next and final video of this series, Dan will be reading one of his wonderful hypnotic bedtime stories. These are taken from his book Sleepy Bedtime Tales, which you'll find available on our website as an ebook. Just to remind you once again of the website is www.themindchangers.co.uk. Thank you for watching this video, and I look forward to speaking with you in my next video blog in a few weeks' time.